guidelines. Blockchain and cryptocurrency can be operated on a single system, and compliance with FATF's triple rules requires global collaboration. The FATF recommendations and the current trend of the global regulatory authorities have common elements, such as anti-money laundering, know your customer, and countering the financing of terrorism. However, regulatory implementation may vary from country to country and from region to region. In Korea, the FATF recommendations are incorporated in a proposed legislation on the reporting and use of certain financial transactions, which is pending in the National Assembly. There are no clear guidelines on exchanges prohibited in the country. But unlike Korea, approved exchanges are appearing all around the world. Now let me ask the panelists to share their views on the regulatory environments regarding digital assets, utility tokens, and security tokens in their respective fields. First, we will listen to the presentation from Mr. Alexander Hoppner, Mr. D.H. Kim, and Mr. Alex Kim, in that order, and then we will have a free discussion on them. And please be reminded that if you have any questions on the presentation of the panelists, you can post them on the UDC 2019 on-site web. And with that, let me first introduce Mr. Alexander Hoppner, CEO of Börse Stuttgart. Börse Stuttgart is a security exchange which is regarded as a pioneer in Germany's digital asset transaction market. Using its Bison application, the company has successfully launched the cryptocurrency exchange that also offers custody services. Mr. Hoppner's area of responsibilities include the primary markets, marketing, communication, and digitalization. Ladies and gentlemen, please give Mr. Hoppner a big round of applause.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for giving us the opportunity to speak here. With Börse Stuttgart, we're very convinced that what we have in front of us is a major change and development in the whole finance industry. And it's our strong belief that you can either be part of that movement or you will more or less be bypassed by the ones who go into that field. So for us, it was a decision we made in 2017 that Börse Stuttgart will transform into a digital exchange offering tokenized services and tokenized assets for trading for their market participants and investors. In that sense, or having said that, our view is that if you want to offer that as a service, then you need to offer the full service value chain. Otherwise, customers cannot really, you cannot be helpful to customers in any sense. So we are going to offer a tokenization platform where clients can come and tokenize their assets, be that securities or non-securities, so issue their ideas and their financing needs in a tokenized way, list these on a regulated exchange, offering trading for retail and institutional clients, and actually also safe custody. For us, especially safe custody and serving retail and institutional clients is very important, because that is something which at least the major players in the finance industry as of now have really difficulties in tapping into that market. So for us, it really makes sense to offer that as a full service and be a market participant there. We had a lot of discussions actually in Germany when I was approached by, especially by the real economy, saying, hey, if that blockchain stuff is going to work out, actually we don't need your exchanges anymore. Well, we naturally have a little bit of a different view to that one, at least for the time being. Because when everybody is out there talking about ecosystems and about what they want to do with their ideas of tokenized assets, from a regulatory standpoint, they're talking about a marketplace. And here we come to a very important point, something that I always like to point out when I'm sitting on a panel having discussions around this. Regulators are not regulating technology, they're regulating function. And if you change the technology and the function stays the same, regulation stays the same. And this is absolutely vital. So even yesterday when we had discussions here or had panels or discussions, it was somewhat solving issues of the future, issues of non-transitions and public chains or environments, UTs. But you have to learn to walk until you can run. And today regulators will start off the race into blockchain technology for all assets with private environments and with permission environments. And allow me to say so, we don't have an issue in domestic trading of securities and at ultra low latency with knowing who our clients are, with knowing who our customers are, with having perfect data on everything. This is not the problem of today. The problem of today is very inefficient, very costly post-trade. We're all talking about the global financial market, but if you look really into it, it's not a global financial market. It's a really fragmented regional market, and it's very expensive for users of that market to overcome these hurdles. Now, if you allow me to very simplify, to say how is the process running right now from investor to the issue on the other way around, then you have these various rules that are in this circle that have to be fulfilled from a regulatory basis. So it is not as easy as it always sounds that I just go somewhere and buy a stock or buy an asset. There's a lot of rules involved because, at least in most jurisdictions, you're not allowed directly as a trader to trade or as an investor to trade securities. So there's a lot of stuff that you have to do. If you look, what more or less happens is that DLT allows us, because of the inherent capabilities, to fulfill a lot of the functions that beforehand certain market participants took over. They can be now substituted by the technology. And this is the big breakthrough for us. So we can actually push the players outside of that circle, but the function remains. And that means that it is absolutely vital to understand that although technically you can substitute a player, a role, a certain aspect of the value chain, the function remains. And the regulator will, let's say, double check on you based on the function that you fulfill. This is extremely difficult for a lot of European startups and development companies because they come with this pure technological drive and really the push directly into the ultimate solution that will probably come, but that's not the starting point. And we had discussions here in Zoom, for example, where one of these companies said, hey, regulator, you have to understand, we're public. And my answer was, no, the regulator doesn't understand, and he doesn't have to understand. He will say, I don't care, go to jail. Yeah? And this is something where really we need to bring both worlds together. Ultimately, even our goal is a non-permission public environment, but we need to take the regulator and the legislation along on that path. Otherwise, we'll fail because we're stepping too fast and we are in a highly regulated environment. But it is our strong belief that this is achievable. This is why I kind of remember having been in a time where the change in the whole industry is as big as potentially can be. Maybe with the introduction of technical trading, which was like mid of the 90s, where the same, let's say, speed of development and use coming around there. So for us, it's really, the first step is expanding actually Germany and in Europe. Germany is really trying to be on the forefront of regulation there and be really, at least once, I would say, we missed a lot of stuff, which you, especially in Korea, but also in Asia, very well on the forefront. But for regulating of security tokens, Germany tries to be on the forefront, at least in Europe, with a strong push to have something set until the latest mid of next year. We'll see whether that works out, but at least that's the will of the government. And they have also the strong will and belief that they need to also bring up an environment, and safe and sound environment for non-permission and public blockchains. And this is very interesting because regulation so far taps on the one single person or entity or function that they can make responsible for, which, as we all know, is on the public side pretty difficult. But nevertheless, they want to tackle that one. And we, as Börse Stuttgart, we decided to be on the forefront of the exchanges. We have everything in place that we need for that one. Plus, we're the only exchange globally who owns a broker, which is very important when you want to offer trading for retail clients. Again, technically, is one thing. The function to offer that to retail clients, again, taps into a regulation system. We try this naturally over a partner network. We're running 8 exchanges, 9 exchanges in Europe, or 9 exchanges including Switzerland. We're running the largest OTC network in Europe, although probably most of you will never have heard about us. And we partnered up with very, very strong brand, relative we'll talk about it a little later, Axel Springer, to have mass market adoption reach. Because our race is not, sorry to say so, the best technology in the world. Our race is to make what we do mass market adoptable. Because we strongly believe in the end, it cannot be just 1,000 or a couple of thousand people doing the trading here and doing managed beer trading. We need to evolve this whole technology in the sense that major players of trading of assets can use that within their normal day-to-day life. So we need to bring the efficiency there, and that means it needs to be faster, or it needs to be cheaper, more efficient to trade, all on a global basis. And this is the next push that's going to come. How do we link up the regions that are going to evolve there on the blockchain environment and on the blockchain, let's say, ecosystem or space? As said, we have everything in place. Started with our trading app starting this year. It's up and running. Custodian is up and running now. The fully fledged MTF will follow shortly, and the custodian will be set to the next rule set as soon as the German law has been passed. The German regulator just announced how this is going to be organized, and we'll then switch the organization of the current custodian to the new regulatory regime, and then we will, by roughly, let's say, starting next year, end of this year, will be in the position to offer that also on a European basis. I'll jump over that one. Yeah, I said, I think what is very important, especially for a developers conference, technically a lot of things are possible, but the regulator does not regulate technology. It's very important. It regulates the function. And although we can kick off and kick out a lot of classical players, we have the chance with our legacy IT systems to build this new, we still have to ensure that the regulation kicks in as soon as we take up that role. So please bear that in mind when you're charging or hitting or hunting the next technology steps. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. It's very interesting to hear from you that there are pretty good justifications for taking the traditional stock exchange model to a digitalized version. And I'm really kind of surprised, I think everybody in the audience, that Germany is leading the path in that regard.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, moving on to our next speaker, Mr. D.H. Kim.
Good afternoon. 안녕하세요. 김도일입니다. I'm going to talk about relevance. Actually, it's in line with what Alex just talked about. So today I try to just focus how I can help deliver some kind of framework of capital markets for developers to kind of brainstorm your ideas in terms of architecture or the blockchain enthusiasts, how you can figure out something that's really applicable to capital markets. I'm going to start with what is Finhaven. So my company, Finhaven, we have Finhaven Technology and Finhaven Capital, and mostly in terms of products, we have Finhaven Trading and Finhaven Club. So Finhaven Trading is basically a trading platform to trade securities. But in this case, the securities, we call them digital securities instead of security tokens, because tokens sometimes can be ambiguous in terms of what you really mean by that. Finhaven Club is a marketplace for research and data. So you can publish your research or data, you can price it, and you can trade it on the platform. We just actually had released one of Finhaven Club yesterday. So at Finhaven, we build the capital market infrastructure. When we say capital market infrastructure, we say end-to-end capital market infrastructure. So the beginning part is really about investor onboarding, all the way down to depository. Of course, in the middle, you need an underwriter, you need an issuer, and the issuers issue their securities, and broker-dealer they trade, and there's a stock exchange, clearing agency, transfer agent, and some technical service providers in the middle, and the depository. So we try to provide that full infrastructure to capital markets. What we do is parallel innovation, and this is, I think it's quite relevant to probably all of you, because when we look at capital market legacy system, it's based on paper securities, but we are talking about digital securities. When you have a different assumption in this case, which is digital securities, then you probably have to think about whether the legacy system is really meaningful, or is it really applicable to the world of digital securities. So we take the approach of let's recognizing the legacy system, and parallel by parallel, we develop a separate infrastructure for digital securities. Now, what I just said is really about relevance. Well, relevance is always an interesting topic because we can talk about a lot of stuff, but if it is not relevant to a certain thing that we're working on, in this case, business, capital market business, then the technology itself is meaningless. So to make something meaningful, we got to think about the relevance, and in this case, relevance to the capital markets. Then what kind of framework do we need for capital markets? Now let's go back. What is the simplest transaction we can think of? So this is the elders at the gate. So, like thousands of years ago, elders gather at the gate, and they sit down and talk. So, you want to buy a chunk of land from your relative. Now, you need some witnesses. So you go out to the street and you call the others, and I say, I want to buy this lot of land from Bob. So elders, listen, Bob, how much do you want? What's the fair price to you? And he would usually say, we're good friends. I don't really need money, just take it. But of course, he doesn't really mean it. So he'd say, well, just give me 1,000 bushels of grain. Okay, good. So here's the deal. And then elders, did you just, you just heard, right? I'm buying this land from him, and I'm going to pay 1,000 bushels of grain. So that was the deal. So here's a buyer and seller, right? Who are the custodians? Buyer is the custodian, seller is the custodian. They are basically, if you own the asset, you are the custodian. Is there a counterparty transaction issue? Counterparty risk? Yes, there is. Why? Because, well, later on, I don't know whether he's going to pay me, really, right? So sometimes they deliver, well, here's my settle, take it. So and then, well, here are the witnesses. But simply, at later stage, if there is any kind of title paper, they'll probably exchange money with a title paper. In this case, 1,000 bushels of grain with a title paper. So let's think about this original, the simplest transaction model, and how we can secure this model with these modern technologies. Next, this is May 17, 1792, I believe. This is the beginning of New York Stock Exchange. A Buttonwood agreement under a Buttonwood tree. Well, some people say there was no Buttonwood tree, but you can see the stockbrokers together. They say, we got to have certain agreements so that the market can be stable, right? And there is efficiency in capital markets. But again, if you look at London Stock Exchange, I'll just read to you in London Stock Exchange history what I found. 1972, the London Stock Exchange and Axtel introduced the market price display service with 16 pages of market prices and 4 pages of company news summaries. The service's mainframe computer took up an entire floor of the city office building. That's 1972. 1986, so this is not that long ago, 1986, Big Bang, the deregulation of the securities industry as trading moved from face-to-face dealings on the market floor to computer and telephone dealings, a new method of distributing information fairly and widely was required. The exchange enabled the market users to view full text announcements on the company news service and the summaries on the edited text news service. That's 1996. Okay. Now, let's think about this. Advance of information technology. Does it really help to have efficient capital markets? Probably. We probably have better liquidity with all these computer databases, right? Because we don't have to go out to wave our paper securities. Say, here's my paper. Here's the commercial paper. Please buy. By the way, that's Mr. Goldman of Goldman Sachs, the founder of Goldman Sachs. That's what he did in Manhattan, waving commercial paper to sell commercial paper to people. Now, but then again, with a computerized databases, what do you have? We have all different kinds of risk issues. So we have a new risk profile. We constantly gotta measure and mitigate. Let me tell you a couple of them. We have custodian risk. So what is a custodian risk? When you have an account with a Samsung Securities, for example, you are the owner of those securities. So you own, let's say, 1,000 shares of Costco in your account of the Samsung Securities. And of course, you are the owner of the securities, but who's the custodian? Samsung Securities. Okay? But you remember, was it last year, they made a mistake by putting wrong number on the dividends, right? It was a cash dividend, but they made it a stock dividend. And then all of a sudden, the number of shares outstanding increased. Well, who knows? Even now, a lot of companies, they probably have more, number of shares that we really see on the paper. With a custodian, since you're not a custodian, when broker-dealers, they lend your securities to short sellers, do they need a permission from you? No, they don't need your approval. But they can lend your shares to other people, right? And then we have a short seller issue in the market. What's the next issue? Counterparty risk. Okay. Because now you're using a custodian, and there's usually transaction plus 2. In fact, in Japan, even up to June this year, it was transaction plus 3 days. Now, I think there are 2. But even with that, you basically rely on the credibility of broker-dealers. So that's why there's a capital adequacy requirement of broker-dealers. One more, what about information? I just read to you what happened with the London Stock Exchange. Okay. So what if a company's issue misleading information? What if there is a bunch of conflict of interest that they hide and then they don't disclose to the market? So there's an information issue too. So that's information asymmetry. And that's why we have regulators. And the regulators, they have 2 things in their mind. One is protecting investors. And the other is promoting fair and efficient capital markets. Okay. So when you think about technologies, these are the principles. How the mindset of regulators. Regulatory requirements of marketplaces. So today we're talking about marketplaces. Whether it's a security market or utility market, basically these are the main regulatory requirements you have to consider. Right? Their letters are quite fine, so I don't know I can really read them. You can see market integrity, conflict of interest, transparency of operations. A lot of things when you look at, basically they want to make sure there's a fairness in the market and there's integrity in the market. Right? And if you use outsourced service providers, you got to make sure you check on them and you clearly know in their books and records. Regulatory requirements of dealers. Why did I include this page here? Just Alex mentioned, what did he say? He says he has a broker-dealer, so that he can have retail clients. Now we see a potentially a potential integration, vertical integration in capital markets with the new technologies. So you also have to consider regulatory requirements of dealers. With all these regulations, now let's think about this. What about high frequency trading? What about short selling? What about system integration? Complicated databases and complicated cross-border transactions and expensive cross-border transactions. When I say expensive, it's not just a money issue, it's also a time issue too. Transparency issue, KYC, AML, suitability advice. Although there are all kinds of regulations, are they really real? For example, do you feel your investment advisors really know you? Have you ever received any suitability advice? Or have you just signed on the product agreements, not really reading the fine prints? You've probably heard the story of DLS nowadays in Korean market, incomplete sales, random command, right? Why? Because people don't read those stuff. And in fact, banks, when they ask you to sign, they don't want you to read them, I believe. That's why they're highlighters. So whatever, there are regulations, but I'm not really sure whether they are real. But what am I saying? In fact, with the technologies, I think they can become real. That's a possibility, and that's the hope that developers can deliver. That's a potential value that developers can deliver to capital markets. Now, let's go back to this blockchain hype. But specifically speaking, it's cryptocurrency hype or token hype. Why were you excited? Because you have anonymous wallet? That's one aspect. But anonymous wallet has custodianship and liquidity. And all of a sudden now you see tokens and cryptocurrencies moving across the borders, right? And a lot of you probably traveled to Singapore, and you saw all kinds of nationalities, young, smart guys gathered together talking about all these cryptocurrency tokens. And that definitely show us the future. Well, there is a possibility of global capital market integration. So then, with this technology, what is the key? I started with the old story, custodianship. So now, you may not have to, I'm not saying you don't have to, you may not have to give your custodianship to a broker-dealer to create liquidity. The current system is you are supposed to get this share certificate and deposit that share certificate with a broker-dealer to have liquidity. In other words, to sell your shares or to buy new shares. But you may not have to do that. Why? Because there is a digital wallet in which you kept your digital securities. And you can create liquidity from your own wallet. And with that, we may prevent a lot of negative issues of short selling as well. What about clearance and settlement? We talk about clearance and settlement, but sometimes we're not really that clear about clearance. Okay? So you're the custodian, here's another custodian, right? Securities are moving, and the other side, cash is moving too. Then do we need a clearance? Is there a clearing process? That's a question to ask. Now, what about compliance issues? All the issues that related to regulations, not all, but most of them are involved in compliance. But as I said, are they really real? In other words, do we really have a good compliance? You probably heard, if you give 10% of fee, you can do the money laundering. And then we hear, some of the big investments got involved with those transactions. I don't know. I just read articles on newspapers, so don't rely on me. But there is some stories on newspaper. So with this, we probably have much better compliance, right? And the compliance can be a preventive solution rather than you try to fix something after a disaster. So, we can build a certain new infrastructure, a parallel innovation, and then when this new infrastructure in a contingent environment, when it is successful, we can probably build a bridge from the legacy system, and step by step, we can move from the legacy to the new system when we have very good technical platform. And these are the two key principles of innovative wallets. Essentially, the platform of capital markets are mostly about wallets. And the innovative wallets, one is custody side, that's really about security issue, and also conceptual issue too, with the technology. And after all, the winner is someone who can create liquidity. So it's a security and liquidity. These are the two key pillars of capital markets. So definition of innovation, well, efficiency. It's got to be simplified, more transparent, lower transaction costs, time and money, better capital allocation, and cheaper and better compliance. And with that, we probably can have pretty good global capital market integration, just as we have pretty good commodity market in global marketplaces. Thank you. By the way, we're looking for a strong ROS developers and blockchain architects. So if you are interested in working with Fidelio, please contact me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DH. And that was a very insightful walk down history, going back thousands of years into the history of securities markets. And I just wanted to say that I have the utmost respect for our banks, that I believe they intend for their customers to read all the fine print. So just wanted to say that. Okay, and then we have Mr. Alex Kim. I have had the privilege of working together with Mr. Kim in Naver and also Kakao, and he and I actually joined around the same time Tunamo together, and he's in charge of Southeast Asian operations. So with that, Mr. Kim.
Thank you. Thank you for the great intro, Mr. Lee. So my name is Alex. I'm heading up in Asia Pacific. We have a business in Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand at the moment. Let me briefly show you how is the regulation stance in those countries. So in 2017, when we started a bit overseas expansion initiative, there wasn't much regulation on crypto space. So all the central bank, they said that, okay, you can buy BTC, you can sell BTC, you can hold BTC, but it's not regulated. So be careful when you do it. And in Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, they said, BTC cannot be used as a means of payment because it's not legal. That's what they said. But in Singapore, they had a little bit more lenient approach, saying that whether using BTC or not as a means of payment should be a commercial decision. You just decide if you want. But they said that in Singapore, they saw some growing interest from ICO scene. So they clearly stated that if you want to do ICO, you should avoid this, and do your KYC. So that was the status of 2017. And from 2017 to 2019, we saw a lot of action on government side to bring some the crypto regime in this space to minimize the side effects and promote those innovations. They can hopefully benefit from that. So they started with their philosophy. Some believe that we have to ban it, or some might say that, oh, this could be chance. Some can see this as a threat. Or somebody can say that, I don't know where it goes, but let me just look and see. And then they define their status. What is crypto? Some say it's commodity. Some says it looks like security. Some says, I don't know yet, I don't want to define it yet. And then they study what is applicable regulations and who should be the right authority to monitor this space. And after that, of course, they need to amend the regulation they have already, or they need to define more the details like guidelines for in tax implications. And during the process, regulators and tax security and this and that. And they also know that they need to talk a lot with the crypto players like us. So we are actively engaged in those discussions. And also they seek opinion of those professional law firms or accounting firms and this and that. So I would say that this is consensus building process because this is moving. We don't know where it goes. So they need to talk a lot with those related parties. And when I look into that approach, I realized that they got those key for the target to achieve, which is that they want to bring the market integrity, so that no one is like doing the stupid stuff inside. And they want to prevent those money laundering, like that's terrorist financing thing. And they want to protect investors. And they want to bring something good for the country. So to achieve those targets, they have some requirement for those crypto players, starting with the entrepreneurs. You should be the right person to run this business. And then they have some financial requirement. You need to maintain this amount of capital, the being in debt and the equity ratio and this and that. And they ask you to be ready in operation. They ask a lot of things, like you need to get certain percent to the cold wallet, and you need to assign some portion of your crypto holding to third-party custodian. And if there's no such a thing as a custodian, they define one. And then they make a clear guideline how to report if something bad happens. So meaning the report obligations. And each country has a different idea, but they try to define those players in those scenes. Let's say they define issuer and advisors, like financial advisors in the traditional securities. And then they define digital asset dealer and broker, and they define secondary market like bucket, and they define digital asset custodians. So with this approach is not as well defined like this as it's seen. It was bumpable here and there, but I feel like they are mostly following the thinking to bring more transparency in this innovative field. So they were very busy in last 2 years. MAS of Singapore, the financial authority there, they issued a payment service bill. They revised it a lot after a few presentations, and they revised ICO guidelines as well 3 times. So they now have a quite complete and clear guideline at the moment. In Indonesia, they define who should be the right authority to monitor this space. So in 2018, June, they defined crypto asset as a commodity. So FFB, which is Commodity Futures Trading Regulatory Agency, became the authority to monitor this space. And then after a few months later, they issued a guideline for crypto the regulation. So in Indonesia, if you want to be operating secondary market for crypto, the asset like equity exchange, you need to get licensed. In Malaysia, they issued a regulation from BNM, the Central Bank of Malaysia. After that, they changed its authority to SC, and SC announced the regulation. Now they have those resigned to issue license to exchange in Malaysia. And Thailand, they had an emergency decree by King, which is signed by the President of Thailand, because a lot of people do something in the crypto, but there wasn't any law in Thai. So they issued a decree saying that they're going to do the regulations soon. And then they issued the crypto regulation in 2000 July, I think. In Philippines, they were quite early, so I think they issued the regulation at 2017 January because they have a lot of cross-border remittance. And now they have at least 9 licensed exchanges in the Philippines. So those countries, those governments, they were very busy last 2 years. They tried very hard to bring those crypto to reside in those countries. So let me go this country one by one. So this is a speech by head of MAS of Singapore. It was announced last year, March, in Money 2020 event. I think this speech is capturing those ideas behind those regulations quite well. So they say the money has been used since 5,000 years ago. But the money we think at the moment, which is backed by those central bank, is quite recent development. It has been only 300 years. So they keep their stance that with technology, we don't know where it goes. Crypto asset can be money, we never know. So they want to make it, they want to be open to the possibilities. So they decided not to regulate crypto itself direct. So there isn't any crypto-related regulation specifically in Singapore. Instead, they try to minimize those side effects, including those KYC issues. But still, they say that we do not try innovation. So it's like wait and see approach. And to comply with what they said, they had a clear guidance on ICO. So they noticed a lot of people come to Singapore to trade. So in 2017 November, they issued a guideline. You should, if you want to do ICO, you should do this. It was only like 13 pages long guideline. After that, people noticed that, so people see this as Singapore legalizing ICO. And it gives the project a lot of the peace of mind because they don't, since they know like what is not allowed to do, they don't fall into a trap of regulation, right? So there a lot of people come to Singapore, and MAS had to revise the guideline a little bit more. So they added is helping Singapore a lot to make it the destination for ICO. So if you look at the guideline, the overall stance is that as long as you don't do this, we don't regulate. So that is the overall stance of it. But they say still, if you have entity in Singapore, you have a general obligation of KYC. So you should do this. Do your KYC properly. And they also have some clause about those exchanges saying that, we are working on Payment Service Act. We're going to please consult your law firm in Singapore. So that's what they say. And they even have case studies because so many people ask MAS, can I do a crypto issue in Singapore? So they have like 6 case studies at the initial the guidelines. But they say, case 1, case 2, case 3, if you do this, don't ask, it's not regulated. So it's like on your own. And this case is quite interesting. And they say that SFA is not applied on these activities. But soon, we're going to regulate this space with the new payment framework. So you need to watch this space. That's what they say. So with this, Singapore becomes the ICO destination, and we see that there is like huge competition in ICOC or IEOC. So I believe that finding right jurisdiction to start the project is like becoming more and more important. In that sense, I would say Singapore could be the prime location. If you're a big company, you want to issue a token, like reverse one, to use to leverage for existing business. You don't want to go to, I would say, some unclear places. So in that sense, Singapore could be a popular place thanks to their clear guidance. So if you look at the 2018, Singapore became the top country in the world by ICO size. And now, they had a long history with the Payment Service Act. This act is basically defining those fintech space. They had a lot of revisions and consultations with those businesses. And the core idea of this is that they function. So MAS, they slice and dice existing fintech companies and they define key elements or activities of those services. So they divide into 7 activities. So they say, if you're doing fintech, you will be either or you're gonna be like cross-border remittance, or you may like handle those payment tokens and this and that. So if you are doing business and among your function, if you do one or like more than those activities, then you need to get license or permit by activities. It's like legal law. If you do fintech, but if you are not doing any activities defined in here, then you don't need to ask MAS. And in this activity, they have activity F, I think, which is the payment So they generally describe crypto assets as one of the principal payment tools. So with this, they don't really directly regulate crypto space. But they do have clear guidance what you have to do when you do those activities. And it includes like 5 type KYC procedures, so those information securities, the clearing thing, and BCP and everything. So this is how they do it in Singapore. And let me talk about Indonesia now. So in Indonesia, they got some different idea. So this is an article in Indonesia, and the Jokowi, the current president of Indonesia, he mentioned that we have to catch up. And blockchain or DLT or Bitcoin is another thing we have to catch up. If not, we're going to be left behind. So they see this thing as a new technology where they have to catch up to make some difference. And Indonesia, they don't have like really big advanced financial market, but they are big in commodity. They have a palm oil, they have a coal, they have the biggest gold mine in the world. So all those like instruments was evolved around commodities. So in Indonesia, all those like options or futures based on commodities or securities are commodities. So in that sense, they say Bitcoin or crypto asset is intangible thing. So they think BTC is a commodity. Hence, the BAPEC, which is a commodity futures trading regulated agency, becomes the authority to monitor the space. And they did announce a long regulation, and they define crypto asset exchanger, crypto asset clearinghouse, crypto asset, the digital asset custodian, and they do have detailed guideline what we have to pass. You need to get this amount of people. You need to get the ISO security verification to make sure that you don't have any hacking accidents, and you need to keep some particular amount. If you want to open up in Indonesia, the minimum capital requirement is about 3.6 million dollars. It's not small. So they will have the guideline. And any crypto asset which is traded in Indonesian exchange should be approved by them. So those regulators in Indonesia, they will decide which token can be traded or not. Malaysia is quite an interesting thing. So in Malaysia, it didn't used to be the body to control the space, but suddenly because SEC, the Securities Commission, becomes the party to monitor the space. And 2019 January, we got a order signed by the Minister of Finance saying that from now, this asset is security, and it will be like this since from tomorrow. And if you are not operational now, then don't do it until you get the license. And if you don't comply, you have a jail time, less than 10 years. It's written there. And after that, they announced 5 detailed guidelines. They didn't make a new guideline, so they had existing guidelines on recognized markets. So they defined the crowdfunding, P2P, and everything inside. And they added another chapter inside. And basically, they bring cryptos, the asset exchange, into one of the design they already have. Because of that, their requirement is not that low. It's very tough. And also they say that we have to follow this strict KYC guideline here. It's very detailed. So for example, like if like politically exposed parts of DP, you can do it in Malaysian DP, but you cannot do the foreign DP. And if you want to do non-face-to-face, you need to do this. Very detailed one. And they also have this consultation paper, which is describing how you do ICO in Malaysia. So they're working on it. It's not final yet, but they have a clear plan to regulate ICO space in Malaysia. So at the moment, if you want to do ICO in Malaysia, you cannot. You have to wait until this guideline is fixed. In Thailand, this is the emergency decree by the king. And he said that, I know a lot of people like using crypto assets, but there's no law at the moment. So, but I do see there is some innovative element of the blockchain or BRT. So I'm not going to stop this, but we're going to control the side effect. And they define crypto asset the market as like, they have 2 buckets. One is cryptocurrencies, the other one is digital assets. Cryptocurrencies are something like the medium to be used to buy those digital tokens. And these tokens, I feel like they treat it more like securities. And in market, they define those ISO quarters. So if you are helping an issuer to issue the digital token, you should be licensed under Thailand SEC. And then they define those delay broker, which is also licensed. And you can open up secondary market, like if you get the license on the title system. And at the moment, I think they issue licensed, provisional one to the few players already. And they are monitoring those players how to operate their businesses. And they also have the detailed guideline for FIs, whether they can do or not. And banks, they are not allowed to do any crypto businesses. But if you have a securities company, you can do ICO, issue token, or you can do ICO porters, helping others to issue their tokens, and you can do custodian or you can do exchanges. And lastly, the Philippines, they issued this guideline in 2017 January from the Central Bank of the Philippines, because they have a lot of those crypto remittance sending money into the Philippines. And with that guideline, they have a detailed control and reporting obligation and sanction clause and this and that. And at the moment, they issued license to 7 companies in the Philippines. So if I wrap up here, each country has different ideas. In Singapore, they say virtual currency. In Indonesia, they say crypto asset, which is commodity. Thailand and Malaysia is quite similar. They have digital currency or digital token. And ICO in Singapore, Indonesia are not regulated yet, but Malaysia, Thailand is regulated by SC or SEC, and exchanges all regulated here. So there isn't like unregulated exchanges. So if you want to open up exchange in those countries, you need to get a license. And they also have who is the authority ruling this space. So I would say last 2 years, there was a lot of change in those countries, and they are trying very hard to adapt to this new innovation, which is perhaps helping their own economy. Right.
Thanks, Alex. That was a very thorough dive into the regulations. Given all the different countries in Southeast Asia, I mean, that must be quite an effort to keep on top of all the changes in recent regulations. And my good friend Valentin has been sitting next to me for almost an hour now, not saying a word, almost falling asleep. But Valentin works for the largest media company in Germany. And what is a media company doing in blockchain and securities exchange?
Thanks for having me, Segu. I was not falling asleep, for the record. Maybe to provide some context first, because I think Axel Springer is not yet a household name here in South Korea. Axel Springer is the largest digital publisher in Europe, and maybe for most people in the room it's hard to believe, but there was a world before the internet. And I'm emphasizing digital publisher here, because in the early 2000s, still, Axel Springer had almost no revenues whatsoever from digital or online businesses. And that transformed quite quickly recently. And today, 90% of our revenues are coming from digital or online businesses. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is to answer your question, what are we doing in the blockchain space as a media company? I mean, maybe you know Business Insider or eMarketer, these are some of our international brands. It's not obvious what we will do in the blockchain space. The general answer there is with new technology, we always do it. We have a kind of a trial and error approach. So I personally don't believe in the concept of being a fast follower. And I think in many areas in our company, we try to lead the way. And blockchain is obviously one area that is extremely significant here. And we as a media company, we know what it's like to get our industry totally disrupted by innovation. The internet, right? Mobile and the internet totally changed our business models. And it's our hypothesis that what happened to our industry with the internet is what's happening to the financial infrastructure that is older than the iPhone. And so not just because it's new technology, but what the technology does is it's cutting out the middleman, and it allows more direct-to-consumer business. So today already, we run the largest financial news portal in Germany. So people already come to us, the financial news portal, but also the other news outlets. They come to us to inform themselves about the capital markets and the world economy. And we already operate another JV, a broker business. So people don't give stock recommendations, but people read about the stock market. So for 3 years now, our readers can now also purchase stocks through our broker joint venture, and that has been tremendously successful. So blockchain technology is allowing us exactly to do that. So the vision that we share with Stuttgart here is that was actually discussed that I had in our first meeting, and the topic was that our bet is that much of value exchange will be in some form of a tokenization in the future, and we don't think that these tokens will be purchased at the local bank and a brick-and-mortar shop. There's going to be new channels where to buy and sell and purchase tokens, and we think it makes a whole lot of sense that you can do it where you already read about the economy and stocks and securities and so on. And yes, that's our bet, and that's why we partner with Stuttgart, because we still a very traditional, old-school German company. So of course we wanted to have a partner. So for the perfect way to go. Yeah.
Great. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of regulations, I just wanted to throw out a general question to all of the panelists. For Korea, the regulators here won't even talk to us officially. I'm sure they're studying very hard all the trends going on in different parts of the world, but it's kind of surprised because they always talk about blockchain and exchanges and tokenization happening in quote-unquote small countries like Switzerland or Singapore. But today you see countries like Germany and Canada working together with the regulators, coming up with a regulatory framework, and then actually executing and allowing these different securities exchanges operated in their relative countries. Now, I'm just curious how you got to that point, how you started the process of getting permission, getting the licenses, and working out the different rules.
Yeah, for us it was really, as I said, we started mid of 2017. That was very new for the regulators and for the government. They saw that something would come up there, but they were not really sure. And that tremendously changed actually around mid to end of 18, and then especially in 2019. So the regulators were building up teams to really dig into the material and better understand the material. But regulators, they're not there to regulate something that's not there. They're not the early movers. They need to see something, not an idea, not something not tangible. They need to see something in front of them. And from somebody where they have the impression that they understand the general needs of regulation. And that's something which a lot of, let's say, startup companies miss out, as they put the regulator in a lane and I don't need it, and why, and some bucket, instead of helping the regulator to see what really happens. So that was what we really did, is a lot of conversations, a lot of showing exactly what we do, not what we think we should do, but what we are going to do, and then invite them to experience that. And that helped tremendously to bring them to, let's say, positive demeanor, just saying, okay guys, we listen to you, we see what you do, when we have a point, we come back, we ask about this, we ask about this, and so it worked better and better and better. And now, naturally, with the German government having maybe realized that once in a lifetime they have a chance to be on the forefront of the development and not running around, Now that was really the final push, because that was really from top government down, ruling parties to say we have a digital agenda, and in the digital agenda, blockchain is mentioned several times. And so latest with that, all the ministries, let's say, fell into the direction of support. And that also was a big push for all the more institutional players, because they knew, okay, now it gets serious. Government is going to do it. It's not a question of when, or well, if, or whether at all. It's just a question when timeliness it hits in the market. So continuous discussion, helping them to see and understanding the general needs, that was it for us.
I see. How about Canada?
Well, I think I really appreciate the positive approach of Canadian Securities Commissions. So the appreciative is the CSA, Canadian Securities Administrators, and then each province has its securities commissions. So when there was a cryptocurrency hype in the market, the regulator's perspective was, we're just come to us and talk to us. We're not trying to crack you down. We believe this is a new, financing solution to technology companies. So that's our perspective. So don't be afraid of us come to us and talk to us. That was the attitude of those securities commissions. The second thing is securities commissioners, they have been issuing consultation paper. So they identified certain risks and risk mitigation strategies and asked very specific questions to the fintech community, asking, is there any other risks that we have not identified, or do you have any further comments on what we're trying to do? So there's a very active communication between the securities regulators and fintech community. And furthermore, some of the securities regulators, because of this crypto markets, they have been cooperating, very progressively as well, such as Financial Conduct Authority of the UK, Security SEC of the United States, CSA, Singapore, MAS, all these regulators, I found that they know each other very well. They actively communicate about the developments of their regulations, and in fact, they even have cross-border sandbox program. So I think we have to benefit from the positive approach of the Securities Commissions of Canada. And second thing is, our approach was, instead of trying to do quietly, let's just go and talk to them, what we want to do. So try to have that open communication at the outset. That has been very helpful.
I know that, Alex, you've been through quite some obstacles and challenges in Southeast Asia. Is there a difference between the different countries, the regulators? Do they have a different attitude?
I will say that there is a spectrum. And regardless about the spectrum, our stance was quite the same. So the key in our stance was to have transparent engagement. So when we met them, those regulators, they were quite surprised, because they told me that those crypto players, they try to hide. They don't really just come to you first, knock your door, and ask questions. So in some countries, they told me that we are the first one to knock your door. And we had a lot of competition. And when we had a question, we try to be transparent as much as we can, because we are not perfect. And if we say that we are perfect and we are ready, they got scared. They got worried about it. So understanding that there is a missing gap between industry and regulator was the starting point. And in that sense, I really appreciate those regulators across those countries, especially in Indonesia. Like, for example, yesterday, our team spent time with the Bapeti, which is a regulator in Indonesia, 12 hours in Bali. So they reached out to those crypto companies in Indonesia and told them, oh, I know that you guys also have concerns. So they met us in Bali. They spent 12 hours together to understand what is concerned on the regulator side, on the business side. So this kind of the effort on both sides is like helping to shape this the city in nice way, in great.
Having been a journalist in a previous life, I know that the media has very strong ties and relationship with the government. And just curious whether Axel Springer had an active role in bargaining and talking to the government officials in opening a digital exchange in Stuttgart.
So, there are strong ties there for sure, but I think in this particular partnership there wasn't so much of a necessity because the colleagues who go to Stuttgart talk with the authorities on an almost daily basis. So, but for example, we hosted a dinner at our headquarters where we actually also had lunch, and we hosted dinner and we provided a rotation. It was hosted by one member of parliament. And we called it a blockchain dinner, and we invited stakeholders from industry, and so there were a couple of them from the parliament, and everybody were talking issues they were having. So we allowed conversations between the industry and some of the politicians to actually happen. And also there are all kind of working groups in the parliament where we will get invited as well. So there is ongoing conversation, and the basis for all this is that there's a big openness in the government to actually push this development and make sure that Germany becomes an important player in this development.
And moving into the discussion on the regulations, I think you each have touched on the contents of regulation in your respective presentations, but in terms of opening up a crystal exchange in these jurisdictions, you can kind of divide them up into different areas. First, entry. How do you set up an exchange? Do you need licenses or permissions? And then once you've set them up, what kind of conduct is required from you? And then there's also prudence, where there's certain minimum requirements that you have to meet in order to operate. And lastly, is there oversight and what penalties follow that? So in each of those areas, I'm going to start with entry. Is there a separate body of legislation that requires you get a specific license from the government?
Yeah, absolutely. So it really depends on the product that you trade. The product defines the regulatory framework. For example, cryptocurrencies in Germany, they are ruled in the sense that for operating in a secondary market, you need a multilateral trading facility license, MTF license. Now, the Exchange Act, or let's say the whole rule book around exchange traded products is very much defined in Europe. So everybody was just waiting for, okay, where in which bucket falls which product. As soon as we know in which bucket it falls, the regulation is standard. It's predefined, you can download it, there's no gray areas. For example, as soon as Germany said it's an MTF, everybody knows what it's going to do. Everybody knows about which license, which activity capital ID, which processes are coming up, whether it can onboard retail clients or not, what security measures do I have to have, which reporting do I have to have. This is all standardized, and we just pushed into that bucket. Now, for security tokens, high likelihood that we just fall under the Exchange Act. So, multilateral trading facilities are regulated by BaFin. Security tokens or securities are regulated by the Exchange Act, and then you have a separate, let's say, supervisory authorities who's responsible for you. But again, the rule book is standardized, it's clear, it's there, and they're not changing the rule book for this new product, because they just said, well, this is security is defined, done. It's a little bit different on an underlying level where you have securitization still on a paper basis, and that needs to be now switched to digital. And this, which sounds like a little step, is actually a pretty big step, because the whole ownership laws in Europe are based on the physical good. So in every single rule book, law book, it tailors down to a physical good. So they have to actually change now all the rules to just enhance on the digital side. But as soon as they've done that, as I said, everything is pretty much standardized and you can just follow through. Interesting to see will be whether, and this is the clearly mentioned will of the German government, that in the first phase they adopt, so to say, the product to the existing range, and in the second step optimize the process based on the efficiency capabilities of the blockchain technology, and that is interesting. So if you go to the post-trade world, where all of a sudden you have instantaneous trading, you have no counterparty risk, you don't need a central counterparty to clear everything there, all of a sudden you can gain huge efficiency effects, which then helps mass adoption. But the timely steps will be first setting up the rules, put them in the right buckets, and the third step then is to optimize the processes.
So the government will be looking very closely at each and every step that you take.
Absolutely. You have to apply for the licenses, and as I said, the rule book for these are pretty much set for quite a long time. And you can just read it up, and usually to come up with a new license takes quite a while.
A quick question popped into my mind. Would Moses Stuttgart ever trade utility tokens?
I think yes. I think we should not be the ones. Currently, the finance industry defines what our customers want to trade. I think this is a wrong approach. We should make available for trading what our clients want. And if this is a token or a physical security or an ownership right or a property, that has to be defined by the user. And we need to, and for the user, it doesn't make, users don't care whether this is a fully-fledged exchange, an MTN, an OTC market. This is finance talk. Nobody cares. They just want a good interface, and they expect that everything that comes after that is stable, secure, and falling under the correct law. That's just the expectation. And this is what we want to build up. And if there is something as let's say, utility token with a certain ability to trade, yes, definitely.
And Canada, you mentioned that you already got the license, you've been working closely with the government there. Is that a scheme that's different from existing legislation, or have you gone through that traditional approval process?
Great. In our case, we're not since we're not creating a crypto exchange to deal with the cryptocurrency or utility tokens, so we're slightly different. But generally in Canada, at the beginning, lots of crypto exchanges, they just started. It's just commodity. So if you follow Rodrigo's story, basically he was running an exchange on his laptop while he was traveling here and there. After that, I think people realized that they wanted to use these access, money service MSB license, so money service business registration, which is basically FX dealers use, and then they move into exchanges. But with the incidence of Quadriga, recently CSA issued a consultation paper so that they can legislate new regulations to build crypto exchanges. So we don't really have a specific guideline yet, but again, the requirements that I put as marketplaces and also as a dealer, that's basically from a consultation paper of CSA. So, we can expect as a marketplace, even for crypto exchange, you basically gotta have all the necessary, tools that you gotta have as a security exchange. down the road.
And for Southeast Asia, you had a neat graph and everything was in those boxes.
Let me wrap it up about in Southeast Asia. In Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, to operate the exchange, you need to get a license in all countries. And those licenses are brand new licenses. It wasn't there before, but now they have that license scheme. And the guideline or requirement is very tough. So if we talk about how detailed they are, let's say you have a hardware and you have those private keys inside, then you may need to license those private keys pieces in a close, like save it just in case you encrypt it. And they ask what kind of encryption algorithm we use. So it's that detailed. And for example, in Indonesia, you need to put a list like more than 70% of data holding in a separate cold wallet, and among the cold wallet, more than 50% you need to put in third party, this asset custody. This asset custody. So they're making those brand new, the world of the regulation in the government. And talking about the capital requirements, well, in Singapore it's quite low. Its basic capital is like 50K Sing dollar. It's not that high, but it's basic capital. So if you are flooding, you need to come for more. In Malaysia, I think it's about 5 million. In Malaysia, it's about 1.3 million USD. In Thailand, 50 million Thai baht is about 1.6 million USD. Indonesia, for crypto asset exchanger, is about 50 billion Indonesian rupiah, which is about 3.6 million USD. But if you want to include those commodities or those tokenized commodities as well, then you need to take it up to like 36 million USD. So it's like that.
And yeah, which is interesting from an approach from German regulators, that if you go through the full value chain, you have various licenses, like the broker license. If you want to go for retail, you have the exchange license, and then you need a full banking license, and maybe you need a clearinghouse license, and you need a payment service provider license, and whatever, what have you. Now, currently, it is the approach that you can use an existing license to enhance your universe of products. But this will not be true for the custodian. So in Germany, rule out, or this most likely will be, that even if you are a full bank, you need to set up a separate entity with a completely new banking license, and that alone can only do cryptocurrency custodian. And this is something which is really, I would say, new. Because so far, they required the license on the one hand, and if you had one, that was okay. Now they say, no, this is a very separate business. We need to separate the risk, and therefore you have to completely set up a new entity to that one. So regarding that, let's say legacy-wise, everyone is back to square one. We all have to apply for the new license, even the big banks. If they want to go into that space, there's no major benefit. Okay, they have a process in place, but there's no major benefit. And the process for acquiring the license starts end of this year, so it's pretty tight. And if you don't manage by, I think it's between February and June next year, that's it. And for 2020, will be done. So it will be pretty interesting to see who will be offering that service in general.
That is a pretty time schedule. And also touching upon these kind of conduct regulations, I briefly mentioned during my introduction that the FATF came up with these travel rules, and this is having stirred up a lot of controversy in Korea, especially among exchanges that have been in operation for several years. Now, how would it impact your operations in Germany, Canada, Southeast Asia?
Well, in Southeast Asia, I would say FATF guideline, and each countries, in each jurisdiction, they need to make a regulation based on the guideline. And in Singapore, we are not seeing like any additional regulation based on the recent recommendation from the FATF. But other countries they're working on, as I know. But the key will be how they interpret that travel rule. So if they really break down into each individual level, it will be very tough. But if they can like break it up to those, let's say, exchange level, then like it will be easier to implement. And in Singapore, those KYC thing is quite interesting and efficient. So since we are not a licensed entity in Singapore at the moment, because license will be commenced by the January next year. So if we see any like suspicious trading, we have to go to police station. So we printed out all those KYC information and those evidence, everything, and we go to the police station, and they give us a stamp, and we got a receipt, and we keep it. And we have done our obligation. But it was like quite a lot of work to go in there. So we asked them, hey, why we can't use the online system? And they told us that, oh, since you are not a licensed company yet. But I told them, like, if it's easier for us to buy online, it will be better. So the Singapore police, they gave us access to their sonar system. So now we can buy online. So, like, well, what I want to say is that they have, when they have regulation, they have their intention. As long as you're helping the intention, I think they are quite flexible.
I would agree to that. I think, I mean, again, Germany is regarding that very introvert. Yeah? In the end, it's only interesting they say, well, we don't care what's outside of Germany, we regulate Germany, or we are therefore in Germany. On the other hand, as Alex said, the regulators have pretty good ties. Yeah? And I would say, as soon or as long as we fulfill the general requirements of the region, that's okay, and then let's see what really comes on top of that one. And then most likely, if you again approach the regulator and say, come on guys, how do we do it? Here it says a little bit left, here it says a little bit right, then usually you find a way for that one. But as said, if you apply for license in Europe, you are anyway so regulated and so ruled out, there's really hardly something that you can move afterwards.
Would that be the same in Canada?
So recently, in terms of KYC AML, Canada is a venture compliant KYC AML supplier. So basically, it's like a level of financial institutions to take the investors or clients to an exchange. That's relatively.
Okay, I think I'm going to open up the panel to questions from the floor. If you have any questions that you have submitted, we would be more than happy to answer them. In Europe, after the passage of the General Data Protection Regulation, there have been a lot of problems or issues that have come up in blockchain projects. I would like to know the relationship between GDPR and blockchain, and if there is a problem, what is the resolution?
If I would have a resolution right now, I'd probably write a book about it. No, kidding. Well, it really depends on, again, what do we store there. In Germany or in Europe, a lot of companies are actually experiencing and trying to come up with, let's say, with protocols or formats that have, like HODA that have certain, let's say, data protection. They're not totally public, outside of the ones who have really the transaction. Or especially starting with on the security side, we're talking anyway over a private network. Even if it is a network afterwards, it's a private one. So there, data protection is not so much big of an issue. Data protection really is an issue in this, what we see as a big benefit, that everything is on the chain and everything is good for everybody. That actually goes against GDPR. This is just a fundamental issue. Because I need to, for every moment in time, I need to be the owner of my data, and I need to have the capability of erasing the data if I want to. Now, if everything for me stands forever on the chain, then this is the total violation of this law. And this is just a way where we definitely have to think which protocol is useful for what, and maybe we find ways that not everything is totally transparent, and that would be the way. If we can erase it afterwards, which would be a little bit against the whole principle of having it documented forever, but maybe not everything needs to be totally transparent to everybody, and that should be a way around that. But it's very early on, so I cannot really answer what the ultimate resolution would be.
By the way, do I have to be a German national or a EU national to be able to trade on your platform?
Today, you at this point in time, you would need a euro account. We'll open up that for other currencies, not so other regions. But today, yes, you would have to have a euro account. In Europe, but in euro.
Thank you. Question to DH. Would the stock market play a role in evaluating, escalating the price of coins, digital currency?
Yes. Why? Because these cryptocurrency and tokens are, we say there are not securities, and they're utilities. But let's look at it carefully. All these cryptocurrencies and tokens, do we really see a strong utility out of them? Probably not yet. But essentially, we are buying, people are buying these cryptocurrencies and tokens because they believe, the value is going to go up. So the motive, the motive and the incentive behind investors' purchase of these cryptocurrencies and tokens are essentially the same. It's a value game, right, and a price game, and therefore there is I think a strong correlation between the securities market and the cryptocurrency market. And in fact, I'm not really sure. I think one day some of the business professors would study the correlation of Bitcoin prices and the stock market indexes, how they perform each other. But it looks like there's some sort of correlation, unfortunately. So yeah, and at the same time, even the Bitcoin market is there. And I'm not really sure the Bitcoin price sustains and goes up because of the fundamental value of the network, or so much capital already flowing to the Bitcoin market.
Okay, next question. This one is for Alex Kim. It seems that the speed of regulation is especially fast in Southeast Asia regarding blockchain and cryptocurrency. What is the major reason for this?
Right, I think this is a very good question. And I do agree that it's faster in Southeast Asia on those the reaction from the government side on this crypto space. And I think that the reason is the first, I think those biggest enemy of innovation is actually laziness. People are lazy, they don't want to change. To make them to change, you need to give them value proposition. And they perceive value compared to the legacy service they use. So the better your service is, the higher value you deliver. And if you ever not properly working legacy service, then your service is better. And in many countries in South Asia, the legacy is not that good. Like if you want to send money, then they will do a batch process 3 times a day, and you need to pay a lot of fees. And the weekend you can send the money. And if you want to invest in a company, it's very tough. Like for example, in Indonesia, the population investing in crypto assets is 3 times higher than the people investing in stock market. So if you look at this, then you will realize that those promises coming from the crypto services is very fancy in those countries. And those Southeast Asian companies, well, they saw what could be done by online or mobile. Now they have a Grab, they have a Gojek in Indonesia, and they understand what would be changed by new technology. So they want to boost those innovations. Government, they want to promote this. So because of all those things, I think Southeast Asia is moving ahead of many more developed countries.
I think it's also, if I may add to that, if you look for global financial markets, the markets are pretty much well distributed. In the sense, you have a let's say 2-3 handful of very powerful players in that market. You have a bunch of countries very powerful in that market. And what we have here has the potential to tip that power level in a different direction. And this also, especially for smaller countries, for smaller companies, to gain back a little bit of this ground that they lost over time to maybe these overpowerful players. And this is a chance when you move fast and set up rules so that you can follow them. That's a chance that you can follow up. And it's not often that you have a chance to tip a little bit of that.
Next question is for all of us. Token economy is a market where liquidity is maximized by the global market. In case of security tokens, each country has different regulations. We have stock type, real estate type, bond type, project funding type, and if all these different types have different regulations, wouldn't that be a barrier to global liquidity?
I would say no. Yes, there are differences. For example, if you have stocks or certificates or derivatives or commodities, but as soon as you put something in the general securities bucket, then there is a pretty high match of the general rules. But correct me, the differences come also from aspects of which investors need to have what information before they can trade, directly, data protections differently. So there's a lot of laws around the classical product, let's say, that can differ tremendously. But the stock market, the stock in Thailand is not so much different regulated than the stock in Germany in itself. Commodities then totally different to the stock. But again, a commodity in Thailand is not totally out of space to a commodity in Germany. So this is really something where you would have to really put both rule books next to each other and then discuss with both regulators. Hey guys, come on, if we tick that box and that box, can we do it? And most of the time you find a way around this. The global trading was mainly hindered so far by big post-trade organizations who have monopoly structures, and that made it very inefficient to trade there. It was less because of the ruling of the product in itself. Correct.
Yeah, I agree on that, and I totally agree that liquidity should be the key. Liquidity in our market. And when we talk about security on the token, like there should be something better by doing tokenization, and that's something good. Should be both good on the token issuer side and investor side. Well, everyone is money, so getting token issuer not that tough. Well, if we can make the issuing token easier with token, then it will be beneficial to them. And if we can make investing in security easier, I mean, especially on the cross-border investors, because we use token, that is a good thing. So, like, the existing security market is highly fragmented, as we discussed yesterday. Then that's scattered, the liquidity is like killing the market. But tokenization, in general, I believe it is helping to add up those liquidity, which is the beneficial thing to the market.
I completely agree with two Alexes here. Just adding a couple of things. Actually, this is the value that it's a strong value proposition of blockchain capital market solution because it's programmable securities. So if there's a slight differences in different jurisdictions, we can even program them and provide preventive compliance solution to the market. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, think about it. It's not really a huge problem. Let's say BMW sell BMW in EU market, and also in Japan, UK, Korea, North America. But every country they have a different environmental regulation. Okay? In some countries they drive on the right side or the left side, and you got to adjust to that. In capital markets, it's about issuer. That's one dimension. Second is where's the investor? That's the second dimension. And the third dimension is where's the marketplace. So it's not a huge mountain. It's only 3 dimensions that we have to deal with. We're not talking about 5 or 7 dimensions here. So I think it's doable. But the liquidity part is always difficult. And the liquidity is also involved with information. I think the issue will be a lot of these security tokens, possibly the securities of non-reporting issuers, which will provide a lot less information to investors. With that, can you really have a good liquidity? That's a question mark.
Before we go into the next question, I have a personal question that popped into my mind. If each of you could give a brief explanation about the usefulness of categorizing tokens or coins into security tokens and utility tokens, especially in the mind of the regulator, that draws a very clean line between whether one agency has jurisdiction over the other. And so a lot of regulators are thinking in that sense and looking at different projects and coins and thinking whether this is a security token or a utility token. Would that make sense for you?
Practically, the distinction was important for us because, as Alex mentioned before, in almost no country, you as a retail customer are allowed to trade directly at a securities exchange. You have to go through a broker. And in the case of cryptocurrencies or tokens which are not a security token, there is we call it an extension or a loophole, whatever it is. But here, retail investors can trade directly at the exchange. You don't have to go through a broker, which for us from a business standpoint is very important and for our overall strategy. So here it's an important distinction. And for me, the distinction makes sense to lower the barrier of entry. So because I think if you wouldn't have that distinction in the first place, then at all, then the strongest regulation, the toughest regulation would apply, and that would stifle a lot of innovation in the space. So to have that other category of token where you can move faster and it's helpful because then you have less regulation there.
I totally agree. I think it's correct to have a distinction there. A lot of regulators go down the route of you have a currency token, you have a token, and you have a security token. Let's see what really ends up being in the utility side, because that the regulators are pretty much pushing it left or right, and very little ending up in the middle. But it's exactly like Antti said. If we wouldn't have that distinguished, we would probably all get pushed to the highest regulated bucket, and then we would overrule some of the aspects that can be used very, very efficiently, very fast. And this is also true for existing products. Not every security is totally regulated the same. There's a certain level which applies to everything, but then can become specialties depending on who's playing with this or who's working with it, who's trading, who's in control. And I think this is correct, and we should spot that from the next level.
Yeah, I think it is important to have that distinction for the platform operator. Well, if it's a decentralized platform, it's really platform users, and also for regulators. Let's say StockX. If you buy shoes, paying $2,000, a pair of shoes at StockX, you buy it because you believe the value of this pair of shoes is $2,000. And at least you have that pleasure of wearing that pair of shoes or keeping that pair of shoes on your desk. So, you are protected anyway, right? So if you buy gold paying $1,500 an ounce, you are protected, you have your gold. But if you buy securities can go up and down. And you don't know the value unless you don't have good information. Now, I just said information. That's why these public companies, they have continuous disclosure requirements, which is very expensive, mandatory requirements. But if you're a utility token, you don't have to do that because you basically provide a good use of your tokens to the people.
It might feel like I could be wrong, but I feel like the security token have a lot of prospects for the development in the future because basically we want to make money. I mean, by other sectors. That is security. So in that sense, and since there's a lot of regulations around security tokens, I should say, is kind of untapped, I would say. And since like those mainstream FIs are participating in this scene, they'll try like using the blockchain or DLT, securitizing those assets. So like since security tokens are starting from zero in some way, I would see like more development on security token side.
Okay, I'm gonna make this the last question, and this question is for Alex. I heard that in Singapore, regulations are kind of relaxed in the form of a sandbox regulation, and the Singapore Stock Exchange has directly invested into security token exchange, and it's in the process of launching. And I heard that it will open in December of this year. Now, does Upbit have any plans to enter the security token exchange business in Southeast Asia?
So this is the company we discussed previously. So, like, if you step back, Singapore, they survive by inviting companies to Singapore. So for them, having good companies listed on SGX is quite important. But nowadays, they are delisting because of the value of the listing is like not that high at the moment. So they want to do something. Blockchain or DLT could be their opportunity. So they are exploring this opportunity with small experiments, so to speak. So this company got the license under MASM Sandbox 1, that is RMO Tier 2. And RMO means like recognized market operator. So you can operate secondary market for the securities. And for the token issuer, the benefit, they don't need to do prospectus. It's a lot of like the improvement for again the traditional way. And for investor side, since there is no prospectus, there is higher risk. So you cannot reach out to those retail investors. You can reach out to AIs or the institutional. So they are playing in that the segment at the moment. We think this is very interesting because Singapore is globally recognized capital market, and they mean the MAS are well recognized of the regulator as well. And we have a lot of interesting projects nearby Singapore who may want to issue a token, security one in Singapore. So since Upbit has expertise in operating on utility token exchange, I think this is a very interesting topic for us as well. So I would say that we are looking at this space with great interest.
So that's a yes, right?
That's a yes.
Yes. Okay. We have about 12 minutes left, and I'd like to use that time for our panelists to each have about 3 minutes to have the last comments about regulations in their respective jurisdictions. So starting with Nancy.
Yeah, so not the least qualified to talk in depth here on stage, but I'm fully aware of that. Being a libertarian by heart, of course, it's hard for me to talk about regulation in the first place. But I must admit, even coming from that school of thought, the more I had quite some frustration with dealing with all the regulatory issues and topics, but the more you learn about it, you also understand the reason behind it. It's not a job creation program for the government, and I must say I was also surprised that you deal with some really, really smart people and supervision authorities. So my last word, I guess, would be I really hope that we can really become a leader also in regulation in Germany, because also for sure for the people are also aware of that the Korean and the German law system are not very similar. You're a lawyer, so the Korean government is also looking to what's happening in Germany, and many things actually swap over to Korea. So if you're frustrated about how the regulatory environment is right now here in Korea, there's hope, because some other good things already came over from Germany in the legal system to Korea. So yeah, maybe there's more coming soon.
Yeah, I think I'm actually looking forward, especially on the regulation side, because I've never experienced so far this openness. And we have a chance to really, let's say, restructure fundamentals of global financial markets. And we will see a lot of new products hitting the market, products that will be deemed securities, but not in the classical sense of the regulation would put it in the bucket. So for me, it's really the once-in-a-lifetime chance to participate in something and having the openness on the other side. Because we have seen such developments in the past, but then there was a strict no change rule from the regulator. And today we see that the regulators are really making up their mind with an open mindset and on an international basis. And this is really something where we need to be now persistent and go forward and take them along. And then I think we can really achieve a lot together with them.
I think, today I talked about relevance of technology, but I think down the road, with regulators, my work would be more involved with the discussing relevance of existing regulations based on the new technologies. So then the interpretation of the existing regulations or legislations should be different things. The technology provides a different solution for completely getting rid of the risks that we have in the banking system. I think that will be a big chunk of work that can be done with the Canadian regulators and some other regulators.
Well, I would say if in some countries there isn't any regulation at the moment. So if we ask, should we need a regulation? Yes, we have only two choices. Leave it as unregulated market, or we can regulate it. So we have to regulate it. And the question will be how are we going to regulate it? And at the moment, I will say this new thing, DLT or blockchain is like it's moving fast, and we don't know where it goes, how big it will be. So regulators or any regulations, if it's too tight, it may not be applicable, then it may not achieve what it intended. So I wish regulation should be there to shape this innovation in the right way, but still it should be flexible enough to give some space for trial and error. In that sense, we can grow this space even better way.
So maybe in 10 years, in 20 years, the global financial center Might not Singapore. Would you agree? Okay. With that, I think we're all out of time, and I would like to thank our distinguished panelists. Thank you very much. Please give them a big round of applause. And thank you all very much for sticking around until the end. Thank you.
네, 디지털 자산 시장과 그 규제 환경 변화에 대해 알아볼 수 있는 유익한 시간이었습니다. 좋은 시간 만들어주신 이서구 대표님과 그리고 패널 네 분께 다시 한번 큰 박수 부탁드립니다. 잠시 후 마지막 프로그램 2019년 업비트 개발자 컨퍼런스 클로징 세션이 진행됩니다. 장면을 정리하는 동안 자리에서 잠시만 기다려주시면 감사하겠습니다. 그리고 분들은